This is the Build Your Path podcast, where we explore how people get into their careers in the built environment. Today's guest is Vincent Nohe. Vincent has over 40 years' experience as a land surveyor at Frederick Ward Associates. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Harkins Builders, building exceptional. Welcome on into the Build Your Path podcast, hosted by myself, Matthew Pine. I am with my guest today,
Vincent Nohe, with Frederick Ward Associates in Bel Air, Maryland. I'm a land surveyor. The coolest thing I've ever done in my career is I once did gravimetric surveys along the Shenandoah Valley in Skyline Drive. So while the instrument was collecting up data, I was sitting there taking in all the spectacular views.
So Vincent, welcome on to the show. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
Yeah. So if you want to walk through with our listeners, how you got to where you are now, maybe what pathway did you follow in your early life to get where you wanted to be?
Well, I actually started out working as a high school student. I took vocational drafting in school, kind of liked it. But I didn't like so much the school, so I ended up getting on a work study program where a land surveyor here in town hired me. And then I did that for about a year, and my brother, who was a geodesist with the Defense Mapping School at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, said, "Hey, if you'd like to know more about surveying, I could get you to go to school for free." So next thing I know, I'm in the Army learning all about surveying. And that's kind of like what got me hooked. So after I got out of that, I joined every surveying organization I could find and read every piece of surveying literature that I could find, and I got licensed at a very early age.
So for those who may not know, can you explain a little bit about what surveying is?
Well, surveying is basically measuring land. We can determine property lines. We can determine the elevations or contour of the land. We do that for engineers, so the engineers can design improvements to the land. We lay out, like I said, we lay out property. We do that for property owners so they can see where their lines are, or if they need to build a fence or building addition or whatever, they need to know that those are going to be on their property. So we have to show them where the lines are so they can stay within the lines.
Great. And you mentioned, going into the military and some of the associations that you joined. Through those experiences, did you ever find yourself having a mentor?
Well, I did. There's so many people that I've met over the years, and I try to learn something from everybody that I meet. I tell you, the person that gave me my first job, it was Fred Ward. He recognized the need to get young people into the profession. He give everybody a chance to learn something. He gave many young people a chance and opportunities to succeed. Fred was so committed to that. That before he passed away, he endowed a scholarship with the geography department of Towson University, so that any student studying geography with a concentration in surveying can apply for that scholarship. So
what are some of the more pressing issues that you see, if they are in surveying or just in industry as a whole? What are some of the issues that you see?
Well, one of the more pressing issues that comes to mind is we're not getting enough young people into the profession. The average age of a land surveyor is like 60 years old, which is pretty old. Well, it's not really old, but it's it's old for old, when you take the average age there. Right. Now, Bureau of Labor Statistics back in 2016 put out a statistic, said there's like 65,000 people employed in the profession.
Wow.
Only 9,000 of them are under the age of 34. So that's like less than 15%. So we're trying to get more and more people into the profession. These younger people that the good ideas, the the new minds, the young minds, that want to learn and all this. Now, see, Maryland Society of Surveyors, which is an organization I belong to, they have a workforce development initiative that was started by the National Society of Professional Surveyors. And we have a chapter chair, a guy named Brian Haney, who's head of the Baltimore County chapter chair. And he, took that initiative and he ran with it. And there's actually on the Maryland Society of Surveyors website, there is a video of him on Charm, I think it's called Charm TV, Game Changers. And he's on there. It's like a 11-minute clip, and he describes, what he's going to, with this workforce development, trying to get these young people trained and into the profession.
So I know we alluded to this a little bit earlier, but what would you say is the coolest or the most unique thing that you've ever done?
Well, like I said, I mentioned the gravimetric surveys, but I've done airport obstruction surveys. When I was in the Army, I was in Germany. It's a survey where you go to the different airfields there, the military airfields, and you have to locate every feature that sticks up above the ground for miles around. It was very interesting. Trying to identify these features, what they are, and how to locate them, how to best locate them, because you can't go and set an instrument up next to each one and locate it, because some of them are far away, some of them are very tall. One of the coolest things in my civilian surveying experience, something admittedly I've never done, and I know very few surveyors that have done it, but one cool thing I think would be is to find a piece of land that's never been surveyed. The land system in the state of Maryland at the time of the Revolution, all the land was turned over to the individual states, and then the states divvied it up and parceled it out to individual property owners. Okay, but every now and then a surveyor will find one that never got transferred from the state to anybody else, and it's essentially never been surveyed and never been transferred to anybody. And like I said, there's very few people that have ever found one of those unsurveyed, untitled pieces of property.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
It is.
So what would you say it's been like to work in a career in the built environment? What do you see as the rewards from your job? Well,
I kind of look at that as, it's often said that land surveyors are the first ones to put foot on a project site and the last ones to leave. Okay, and that's said because we go out and we, as mentioned earlier, we collect data for our engineers, our architects, our land planners. We collect the data, figure out where the property lines are, what the elevation of the ground is. We provide it to them, and they can design. The engineer can design a site, the site improvements, and the architect can design a building. So once they have all that designed, then we go out and we help the contractor that's building it. We show them where to put it, what elevation to put it at. We tell them, usually guide him along. And then once it's all built, that property owner or that developer who was paying to have these improvements done, we go out and we locate them all and make sure that they were built in accordance with the plans and that they're within the required regulations and specifications. So, like I said, we're first ones there. We're there during the job, and we're there at the end.
So, help me understand a little bit better with surveyors. Is there? I know you said a lot of math is involved. Is there, like, if there's a certain building or a certain piece of land that needs to be, the elevation needs to be changed, either raised or lowered? Is that part of your job? You give a cost estimate of that?
Yeah. Well, first, like I said, we need to figure out what needs to be done. A lot of time I work in a multidisciplined firm here. So it may be, a little bit of surveying work, a little bit of engineers. So we decide what needs to be done, what the end result needs to be, and then how to best accomplish it and how to most efficiently accomplish it. And then we'll provide fees to a property owner or developers to complete those tasks.
So I know that you talked a lot about Fred Ward and what he meant to you when you were a little bit younger. And have you had the chance to, in your position, to work with young people and guide them at all?
Oh, absolutely. And always looking for young people that are willing to listen and willing to learn. Like I also mentioned before, is some of these younger people, they come in with newer ideas. There's some people who, I've been doing this a long time, and I know what works for me, but then somebody else always comes along and says, hey, if we did this or that, we might get better results or a quicker result or whatever.
Specifically in your position, what do you like most about working as a surveyor? What are some of the job benefits of working as a surveyor?
Me, I like the problem solving. Like I said, assisting our engineers to get the information they need. Sometimes we do surveys for people acquiring pieces of property. Their attorneys always have questions about how does this deed or that deed affect my client's property, so we can help them figure out. Other times it's helping out a property owner who's wants to know where his property line is so he can build that fence or build that addition. Or maybe sometimes we even get property owners who have a dispute with their neighbor, and they think just to settle this dispute, we're going to get this property line laid out once and for all.
So I know you talk a lot about the biggest challenge being the gap between the younger people entering the workforce. Say a young person came up to you today and asked you, why should I be a surveyor? What would you tell them?
Well, I find that there's so many aspects of the profession that appeal to different people. If you like working outside, if you like working with emerging technologies, which there are a lot of in the surveying field nowadays, if you like math, science, history, construction, then surveying might be for you.
Okay. And you mentioned right there.
Answer.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned some emerging technologies. What are some of the technologies you've seen change over the course of your career, and then what new technologies do you see on the horizon?
I would say over the course of my career, almost everything we use today has come about, since I've been doing this. We use a lot of computers now. We never did that before. We got software that, laser scanning as an example. We can go out and laser scan a building and create a 3D model in the computer. And of course, once that was started, laser scanning was started, then somebody had an idea, hey, you know what? We can always see better from the sky. So we got drones. Yep. We put them on drones and we fly over. And, there are advances in geographic information systems where basically there are maps in the computer and you can determine a precise point on the earth from these maps. Okay. And then of course, along with that comes the global positioning. Nowadays you can handheld cell phone, you can get within, a foot or two of where your property corner is, and that just amazes me, but I think the next big thing to come along is augmented reality. Okay. I mentioned we go out and we collect all this data for the engineer and the architect. They design their work. They design the site improvements, they design the building. They merge all that together. Okay. You can load those 3D models back into your phone. You got the little VR goggles. Okay. With the precise positioning on the phones that I just mentioned, you load those VR goggles, make sure your positioning is turned on. You can walk through a project site and look around and see the future.
It's pretty cool. Yeah,
it is.
So
you can get those before and after looks, but it's like seeing the future, what that building's going to look like once it's built.
Yeah, better visual for sure than just blueprints or just an idea.
Oh, absolutely.
So as a bit of a wrap up for you, just wanted to give you a chance to tell our listeners, if they're interested in surveying, where can they find information? What association should they look for?
MarylandSurveyor.org is a good one. The National Society of Professional Surveyors website is always a good one.
Okay.
Those are the two that come right to mind right away. But like I said, those two organizations, they're pushing. They got portions of their website, just to teaching young people about surveying. I mean, there's one, the Pennsylvania Society of Land Surveyors also puts out a coloring book, getting kids into surveying. So it's geared towards the younger generation, much
That's
younger,
awesome.
Elementary school. So
That's
they
really
put out
cool.
a coloring book.
That's really cool. I like that. Well, Vincent, we very much appreciate your time. Thanks for joining the show.
Well, I appreciated being here. Thank you for inviting me.
If you want to learn more about Build Your Path podcast or the built environment overall, go ahead and visit buildyourpath.org. Another big thank you to our guest, Vincent Nohe from Frederick Ward. Once again, this episode was brought to you by Harkins Builders, building exceptional. Build Your Path podcasts are produced by the Maryland Center for Construction, Education, and Innovation. I'm Matt Pine. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.